Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee-infused conversations. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and with me, as always, is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
Doing really good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's snowing quite a bit here. We're getting crushed with the storm, so I'm gonna be stuck inside all day, drinking coffee. So, which is not a bad thing. I'm not mad about it, but this is like a typical Canadian day today.
Oh, yeah. It's always like a little bit of a panic in the air, like the week kind of leading up to a big snowstorm.
Oh yeah, the hype is real.
Like, do you get that at the clinic where everyone's like, oh, like, what's going on this weekend? Like,
Yeah, no, it's a good starting talking point though. Like I just know I'm like, oh man, what are you guys gearing up for the big snowstorm?
it's so true.
And everyone's like, oh yeah, I got my snow shovel and my salt and all that. I'm like, geez.
You got to be prepared, though.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to have lots of coffee, too.
No doubt. Speaking of coffee, what are you drinking today?
Well, I'm actually at my brother's house. So I'm pretty sure, speaking of brothers, I think he drinks brothers coffee, which is really good. Place out of Oakville. And he's got he's got a new espresso machine. It's all kind of like, been like calibrated and everything. So it's it's really good. How about you?
I'm just drinking some Pilot coffee, actually, which it's been a while since I had Pilot, and I missed it. It's good.
What kind?
You know what? I don't know the name, so I'm not gonna say it. But it's like molasses, chocolate, and nutty flavoring. So that's pretty legit.
Nothing bad about that.
All right, but enough of that talk. Let's bring in our guest because I'm so excited that we have the one and only Joe Rinaldi back on the podcast for the second time. Joe, welcome back.
Yo, what's up, guys? Thank you so much for having me. And speaking of the snow, I'm sitting here in New Jersey, completely disappointed. It started out on Monday. People were like, yeah, we're supposed to get a dusting. Tuesday, like 1 to 2 inches, I hear. Wednesday, Thursday, we're supposed to get 6 to 8. Friday, everybody's like, we're getting 8 to 12 inches. It's nothing. Rain, nothing, no snow. Super disappointed.
Yeah, the hype comes and then you get nothing.
Wow, that's like way off too. Like from 10 to 12 centimeters to no snow.
No, 10 to 12 inches. We're not on the metric system over here. Yeah.
Whoops, my bad.
But I'm happy to be here though.
Yeah, man, Joe, we're pumped to have you back. So why don't you for anyone who may not know who you are or didn't catch like the first episode that we had with you, which they should definitely go check out. Could you just give a little bit of info into like who you are and kind of what you're doing currently right now?
Yeah, of course. I'm a 24-year-old PT student, third-year student at Drexel University down in Philadelphia. So I'm actually on my last clinical rotation right now. I'll be graduating in April. So just a couple short months, and then I will officially be a PT. Aside from being a PT student, I really just enjoy lifting and just helping people, empowering people, getting people stronger physically and mentally, and just networking. I mean, through social media, I got to meet you guys and so many other great people. And I really feel like that's something that I enjoy and I would encourage other people to do. So that's what I'm all about.
Joe, you've had a bit of a switch, on your Instagram. Like what has this switch been, in content wise and stuff for you?
Yeah, that's a great thing to notice. So for everybody listening, I used to be Joe Flowfit. Now I'm Joe Rinaldi.spt, and in a couple of months when I graduate, I will be Joe Rinaldi.dpt.
Joe, I'm not gonna lie. Before I miss Joe Flow, man.
Yeah, you miss it. Yeah,
I was saying that the other day. I'm like, man, I need Joe Flow back in my life.
Yeah, I might bring it back. I don't know. But speaking of that, with Joe Flow, like about a year ago, so I was putting out a lot of therapeutic exercise content. How to deadlift, how to squat, corrective exercise, stuff like that. And in the past year, probably in the past 6 months more so, I've shifted more towards, if you want to call it motivational stuff or inspirational stuff, but it's really just mindset and lifestyle stuff. So like I said, I really enjoy encouraging and empowering other people. And it's kind of taken me a couple years on Instagram to realize that that's more my niche. And I really enjoyed in the clinic talking to patients and just helping people realize that they're more resilient than they think they are. And I think a lot of that comes with a mindset shift. And that's kind of what I'm trying to encourage and put out on Instagram, while also keeping it relatable to everybody, not just physical therapists, but just everybody in general. So try to broaden my audience reach with that. With that being said, though, as I graduate PT school and get more into the clinical side of things, I would like to shift a little bit more back towards the PT side of things and keep a balance. So also put out some of that Therex stuff like you guys are doing pretty much.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you feel like do you feel like the reason you're putting out some of that kind of content is just because of some of the experiences that you've been having?
Yeah, for sure. If anybody has read any of my blogs, you probably have heard me talk at some point about my eyes. And so for anybody who didn't listen to the first podcast with you guys that I was on, I have a genetic eye disease, and I've been progressively losing my vision since I was about 10 years old. And that's really shaped a lot of who I've become. It's kind of become my story. And in the beginning of that story, when I was a teenager, it was a sad story. But now I've changed it, and it's not a sad story anymore. It's a happy story. And that struggle has kind of been my strength. And I realized that no matter what it is anybody's going through in life, some people have it worse than other people, but you can control what you can control. You can control your attitude, your efforts, your decisions that you make. And if you just take full responsibility for those things, and you're consistent and you work hard and you do the right thing, anything is possible. And I've felt that and realized that 100% in my life. And I just want to spread that message to other people, because even for people hearing that message, it sounds cliche and it might just, go in one ear, out the other, but for somebody it might stick. And if I can help one person, that's the world to me. That's all I care about.
Yeah, Joe, I think that's awesome. And that's one thing. So I had this kind of written down, and we're going to get to it a little bit later, but I think this is a good time maybe to bring it up, is the one thing that I've always really appreciated about you, putting your content out and the discussions that you've had, is that no matter what, you always take this mindset of you always have a choice, right? You've been through some stuff in your life, obviously, that, is not easy to deal with. But in the end, you always feel like you have this control over your decisions. How did you get to this mindset? And maybe not, you kind of just talked about it a little bit, but how do you keep that mindset going on a daily basis?
Yeah. So that, I love that you asked that question, because I'm actually working on an Instagram post that it's about what ifs and if thens, right? So I used to let my life be controlled by what ifs. I was an anxious person. I would think, what if this, what if that? And when I was going into grad school, I experienced a sudden loss of vision. And I thought, what if I go to grad school and then I can't see? Will I be able to finish? What if I go to grad school and this happens or that happens? And it held me back. And it took a lot of deep thought, reflection. And my parents really helped me out big time. And they told me that I can't let my life be controlled by what ifs. And I needed to start thinking in the terms of if then. If I lose my vision, then I'll be okay. I'll be able to handle it. If this happens, then you know what? I'll deal with it then. And I have the tools to be able to deal with that. And so it really took a couple life experiences and hardships to realize that the what ifs weren't worth the worry, and that worrying today really doesn't do anything for you except sap your strength. There's no need to worry about tomorrow, because those what ifs might not happen. They're exactly what they sound like. They're what ifs. And I think the reason that I feel so strongly about that, and the thing that keeps bringing me back and back to that every day when I wake up in the morning, is that I feel like I have a purpose on this earth, and I feel like it's bigger than me. My life isn't about me. It's about other people. And when you adopt that mindset and you truly believe it, you wake up every morning realizing that your actions and the effort that you put out into the world, other people are watching, and it affects the people in your life around you. And those people might not even be in your life today. You know, you being better today and giving your best effort today are going to create habits that are going to make you a better husband one day, a better father one day, a better friend to somebody you haven't even met one day. And if you wake up every morning and look at it as an opportunity to be better for other people, it's lit a fire inside of me that's never gonna be put out. So it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing I wanted to ask, like how, like obviously you've done some self-development, self-growth, you've been through experiences, like you're very passionate about this. How do you think like other people can discover this mindset? Because I think it's obviously everyone's very individual, but there are steps I think that you can take to start to put yourself in this mindset. So what do you think are like some ways that people could do that, or that you're trying to help people realize that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So I start off every morning with probably like 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the morning, of journaling. So I'm a big quote guy. So I've spent tons of time compiling like hundreds, probably close to thousands of quotes. And I'll start off each day with a quote, a little prayer, and then some thought time. And I'll write down what my goals are for the day, how I'm going to get there, et cetera, et cetera. And that process of starting off the morning with intention and setting the intention and the tone for the day it's a great way, for me at least, I've found, to kind of go throughout the day with a purpose. And then it comes down to, over time, for me at least, writing has really been the way that I found my why, as I like to call it. And Simon Sinek, if you've ever heard of him, is just an awesome public figure, speaker. I'd highly recommend listening to some of his stuff, but he has a book out called Find Your Why. And I'd highly recommend that to anybody who's looking to try to find their why or figure out what drives them. And I think a lot of times writing your thoughts down and creating your story is a really powerful way to do that, because we are the stories that we tell ourselves. You know, things happen to you in your life every day, and your collection of those things, but not just your life experiences, is how you spin them, right? I could sit here with self-pity and say, woe is me because I'm losing my eyesight, or, you know, I can't, you know, it takes me longer to read things, or I can't see people's faces as well. And I could just like wallow in self-pity, or I could spin that story in a positive way. And that's my choice. And it comes down to my mindset and my choice. And I could make that a positive, and I have. And when you do that and you spin your story into a positive, it's such a powerful thing. And so I think a lot of times in everybody's head, your story, you tell yourself your story day in and day out, whether you realize it or not. We're all talking to ourselves constantly. And unless you write that down and put it down on paper or on a computer, it's really hard to organize those thoughts. So what I would recommend to anybody is spend 5, 10, 15 minutes just writing. Write down your thoughts, write down your story, spend some time organizing all that stuff. And over time, you'll see patterns, you'll see a theme. And it's really powerful, because once that stuff's down on paper, it's up to you. You can spin it however you want. You can write your own story. You can make yourself the superhero, or you could make yourself, you know, the person who goes out and helps other people because it's a noble thing to do, or you can literally choose whatever you want. So create your story. I would say start by writing, start by reading. And if anybody's listening to this and wants some recommendations of books or podcasts, you know, shoot me a message on Instagram, get in touch with me some way, shape, or form. And I'd be happy to talk to you on an individual level, because it depends on the person. And I'd actually like to spin that question back to you guys and kind of hear your thoughts on how you found your drive, because I know you guys both have incredible drives for what you do in the clinic, what you do as people, and especially what you do on social media with the podcast and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like, you know, kind of like you said, you have to understand why you're doing things. And that's something that me and Dalton from the beginning kind of sat down, and we talked about what our values are, you know, in general, like what we want to be and what we want to portray ourselves as. And I think that vision and everything has shaped itself over time a little bit more and everything. But, you know, I think that the why and the reasons behind what you're doing are ultimately what's going to keep you going. Because if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like you're not going to last, you know. If you're just out on social media or doing whatever you're doing to get some type of external validation, and that's the only reason why you're doing that, it's not going to last very long. And so I think that's to answer your question for me.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, and just to kind of build on that, and Joe, you touched on it. I think what's been so powerful for Will and I is it's always been about something like bigger than ourselves, and I think that's a key factor, right? We've always, everything we've done without really getting, like, without expectation of getting something in return. Mm-hmm. And if something comes in return, whether that be an opportunity, a connection, someone just giving us like that external validation, then great. Like, that's awesome. But if not, like, we're okay with it. We have a vision. We have our mindset around what we want to do. And we just keep trucking along. Like, it's not going to stop us from doing what we're doing. But I think it's also important to mention too that, like, it's not easy. Like, sometimes it gets hard. And I think what you're saying about writing stuff down, and I think me and Will do more of it like verbally with each other, like through conversation, and even conversations with you guys, with Andy, with Zach and Steph, like having those conversations about your vision, the steps that you're taking forward, has helped to like shape our like trajectory as like what we're doing with our brand, and just even as people ourselves. So I think that's also an important thing, is like find people that you can share that with, that can hold you accountable, or could even give you some advice that could help like shape that vision that you have.
Yeah, 100%. I love all that. And hearing you guys talk about that kind of made me think of, I don't know who the quote is by, but you are who you surround yourself with, mm-hmm. right? And if you find a good team and you find good people, you become like them, they become like you. Yeah. And so you have to actively seek out those people in your life who are going to make you better, and also who you can make better and help. And I think that's really important. And the other thing that came to mind as you were talking was that, you know, I think a lot of times someone's why has to do with being bigger than themselves. You know, it's not a why for a selfish reason. It's a why for a selfless reason. Mm-hmm. And if your why is selfless and other people are depending on you, and you realize that your actions have consequences, I think it's a lot easier to stick with that why and wake up every morning with a little bit of fire. And the other thing that came to mind was a Tony Robbins motivational video that I'd probably watched like dozens of times over the past couple of years. But he talks about not being pushed to do something, but finding something that pulls you, because push or external motivation, that's going to run out. You know, you could read all the motivational quotes or watch all the videos that you want, but that's going to fade. That's not going to last. You need to find something that's going to pull you out of bed in the morning. And so if you can find that thing that literally pulls you out of bed in the morning and makes it easy to get out of bed, that's the thing that should drive your why. And for me, that's helping other people, but it could be anything. And so when you find that thing that pulls you, that's what you should latch on to.
For sure, man. And it's the most fun when like you surround yourself with people that are trying to do a lot of the same stuff. Like I get so much joy out of like seeing like guys like you, and like even like Steph the other day, she just posted something about like she's going to be on Clinical Athlete. And I'm just like, man, like I get so hyped when I see like these other people that like you've surrounded yourself with and like built these relationships, and like, you know, that you all have like the same vision and stuff, and you see them have that, like, take that next step. It's just like, it just fires you up, right? And like that's why it's so important, I think, because it is easy, even if you do have a good vision and you have a drive, like to get to those dark places where you're like, I'm not feeling it, you know, like I don't want to do it. Like that is normal, you know, like everyone goes through that. And it's easy for people to not understand that because, like, again, social media sometimes is just like a flash in the pan of like all they see is like hypeness, but that's not what it is all the time, right? So
yeah, 100%.
And it was funny, like you mentioned, like surrounding yourself, you know, with the right people and stuff. And I think that's literally what we've tried to do with this podcast, you know, is try to like build a community where we're surrounding people and exposing people to information that is helpful and I think is positive, and then trying to get that out to whoever needs to hear it. You know what I mean? So that we can have that community. And I think that's what me and Dalton really, really love. And that is like we don't need any motivation to go and do this. Like, we just get so excited to do it all the time.
Just coffee. Just coffee. That's all we need.
Just coffee, yeah.
But that's ultimately what coffee is, right? Like connecting and like having conversations. And so like it makes sense to kind of like surround it by that. So
yeah.
Whew. All right. Let's transition into the next part. So Joe, we know you just finished up like a 12-week clinical rotation at like a children's specialized hospital. And you had a pretty like humbling experience there. And I know you wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. So let's like dive into that and maybe give some people a little bit of insight into like how that went for you. And we can kind of chat about that.
Yeah, so I should start by saying that I've had no pediatric physical therapy experience before this rotation. I thought I was pretty interested in pediatrics because I worked at a summer camp for a bunch of summers. I love kids. They seem to love me too, so it seemed like it would be a good fit. And there aren't many things in life that I get myself into that just from the very start, I realized like, shoot, I'm in over my head. This was one of them. I literally, the first day, first patient, watching my CI treat like a 6-month-old baby, just wailing the whole time, crying nonstop. And I just thought to myself, like, I have no idea what to do in this situation. Like, I don't even know what pediatric PT is, let alone how to calm down this baby and get stuff done. And I felt like I was in over my head. And with that being said, I made the decision first day up front that I was going to put in the work to this rotation. And so every day I got to clinic an hour early, no exceptions, every single day. I'd plan out my day, prepare, be as prepared as I could for the day and get myself ready. And with that being said, I realized that in pediatric PT, more so than maybe any other kind of PT that I've experienced, things probably won't go as planned. You could have a treatment session planned out to a T, to the minute, everything you want to do. And your 4-year-old with autism and ADHD comes in the door, throws a tantrum, and that plan is completely out the window. And it becomes about improvising. And the thing that I found really difficult about pediatric PT wasn't just that you had to improvise, but you had to improvise while you kept control and the attention of whatever child was in front of you, whether that be an 8-month-old baby, a 2-year-old with Down syndrome, a 4-year-old with cerebral palsy, or whatever it was. You had to be prepared to control the situation, be in charge, but also think on your feet. And so that was really tough for me. The other thing I realized was that when you're working in pediatric PT, you have to be really uncomfortable being uncomfortable. Because from the start, you know, you're dealing with a lot of kids who are either crying, screaming, don't want to pay attention to what you have to say. And it could be uncomfortable when there are other parents, other people in the room, and you have this child screaming at the top of their lungs right in front of you and you can't calm them down. And from the very beginning, I just wanted that to stop. You know, I would just think in my head, like, please, just someone make this kid be quiet, please. Like, I'm so embarrassed right now. Like, I can't stop this kid from crying. And what you have to realize is, like, and my CIs helped me through this a lot, is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, it's okay to let a kid cry it out sometimes. It's okay to make things hard and challenge kids. And you have to make yourself comfortable with those things, not only in pediatric PT, but I thought it was a great analogy for life, because there are a lot of things in life that are uncomfortable or a little bit awkward, or, you know, maybe not your favorite. But if you want to grow and you want to get to where you have to be willing to live in that zone of uncomfortableness. You have to be willing to endure some discomfort and know that it's going to get you in the end to where you want to be. And I thought that was one of the big takeaways from pediatric PT for me, was putting myself in this 12-week rotation, being super uncomfortable pretty much the whole time, even till the end, knowing that it was making me better every single day. And that was real powerful for me, you know.
I think that's really good insight. Like some of the things, like some of the parallels to just everyday physio are there too. Like, I think one of the most challenging aspects is handling that kind of social element. Mm-hmm. You know, like something I didn't really anticipate was the situations where you have to conduct an assessment with like a mom and a daughter, or like a father and a son or whatever it is, like where there's that social element where you're trying to navigate the interview, but you've got different personalities and different levels of power in that kind of relationship. And I think that's like a challenging thing, and it's sort of amplified when you're dealing with a baby, because obviously people are really protective of their baby, rightfully so, right? So that's like an uncomfortable situation.
Big time. And it's like working with the family dynamics too, because a lot of times in the area that I was in, the patients were Spanish speaking. So you had an infant or a young child with one or more Spanish speaking parents. And my Spanish is all right. But sometimes you could use the interpreter, or you can just kind of work your way through it. But managing that dynamic with or without a language barrier is pretty hard.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I was also laughing while you were talking because I had this one placement, and I had one client who would come in and who would bring their baby, and my clinical instructor mostly worked with her. But every time I would go up, the baby would start crying, and I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I don't know if it's like the beard or something, but like, I could not be around this client. I had to be as far away as possible.
She probably thought you were a Viking, man.
Yeah, maybe, eh? Who knows?
Joe, I want to talk about, so obviously this idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable is something that like gets talked about a lot. And I think it's huge for us as growth, as people, as professionals. But what kind of strategies do you use? Because like you knew every day you were going back there that you were just going to be super uncomfortable. And I think you're kind of forced to go back because like you got to do your placement.
Yeah.
But like what are some strategies or some things you use to kind of continue to be able to push through that like discomfort, because like it's coming basically,
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize when you're going through something uncomfortable, or even, you read my blog and you realize that I made it through this rotation. It was uncomfortable for me. There are a lot of people in my life who I leaned on during this time. And I think it's something that maybe isn't frowned upon, but not talked about enough, is that nobody could do anything alone. Like whatever it is you do in this life, even if it's indirect and you feel like you did it on your own, there are people who helped you out and that you couldn't have done it without. And so I leaned on my family, and especially my girlfriend helped me out a lot, whether it was just encouraging me or being able to talk to her at the end of the day, and just kind of whether it was to vent or, celebrate a small victory, having those people in my life to lean on and to get me through that was important. So it comes back to having that team or that group of people to surround yourself with. On top of that, we also talked about it, but having your why and knowing your why. And for me, I had a specific why for this clinical rotation. And it started off real early on in the rotation. I realized that so many of these kids, this is a specialized hospital. They see a lot of pretty challenging diagnoses. And a lot of these kids have it so bad. And they're looking to me. If I have the chance to treat them, it's an opportunity. It's an honor. I have to take that with all the seriousness and preparation that I could possibly bring, because these kids, their well-being in a sense is being put in my hands, and that's a huge responsibility. So I felt an obligation to do my absolute best for these kids every single day. And above that, I felt an obligation to my CIs. I had 2 CIs who were investing their time and energy and effort into me. And then I felt an obligation to my family and my friends and everybody who ever gave their best for me. I felt obligated to give my best in this rotation for them, because it's all about investing in other people. And I felt like I owed that to the people who had invested in me. And then lastly, I thought that throughout this rotation, like while I knew every day was hard, I took it step by step and day by day. I tried my best not to look too far into the future. After 3 weeks in and I realized this is going to be tough, I have 9 more weeks. I tried my best not to think that I had 9 more weeks. I thought about this day, this patient, this hour, and I focused in the now. And that's not always easy to do. It's actually pretty hard to do. But, whenever my mind wandered and raced to crap, I have 9 more weeks of this, or, this is only Monday. I brought myself back to the now and focused on that patient, and it made a big difference in the long run.
About before where, it's natural to get exhausted, especially when you're in a situation that you're not necessarily like used to and it's really uncomfortable. But I think that when you have a reason why you want to be there, and when you actually get that interaction, the switch comes and you're in it, you're in the zone in that moment.
So Joe, I know, so we had the opportunity to read that blog that you wrote about like the pediatric thing. And one thing you talked about with your experience was this idea of like, when you're trying to help kids learn how to walk or take steps, you would use like a toy or a prompt and keep it just out of reach of them, and to encourage them to take steps. And oftentimes, they would fall or they'd fail over and over again. And then at one point, they would kind of click and get it. And like once they were able to take a couple more steps, they started to realize like the power they had or the ability that they had. Kind of take us through that. And like, I know you kind of equated it to life in some ways, about having to step out on like just having faith in something. So why don't you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was pretty funny actually, because a lot of pediatric PT, what I ended up finding out, like, wasn't that groundbreaking. It was pretty intuitive. Like, parents do that all the time. When they want a kid to walk, they try to coax them into walking by giving them something that they want and putting it out of reach and make them walk for it. They make them walk for it. They make them work for it. And that's exactly what happens in pediatric PT. And what would happen, like you said, is kids would fall down time after time. But if it was a toy or it was something that they really wanted, they would keep getting back up, with your help if they needed it. But they would keep getting back up and going for that toy. And I thought it was such a powerful parallel to life. When there's something that you want, whether it's a toy or whether it's a job or whether it's to go to graduate school or whatever it is, if you really want it, you will find a way. And no matter how many times you fall back down, you just have to keep getting back up and trying again, because eventually, with persistence, with consistency, it will click. And you have to have that faith that it will happen. Because if you don't believe that it's going to happen, you'll give up. You'll eventually give up and you won't get it. But just like kids, every time you fall back down, get up and walk again, because eventually they get it and eventually you'll get it. Whoever out there is listening, you will get what you want if you work for it with persistence and grit and determination, and if you get up every time you fall down. And you just have to believe. I know it's not easy, but you got to believe.
Yeah, you have to be like resilient, right? Because you're gonna get knocked down and you're gonna have to kind of overcome that. But I think like, and you're the quote guy, right? Like, like you got all these quotes, and I read your blog on the Guatemala blog, and it was such a like awesome blog. I read it so quick. I enjoy like the fact that you get your quotes out of the experiences. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones in that blog was this idea of resiliency. And it is this resiliency is a mindset that can be learned. And I feel like if that's something that you got from that experience, then we got to talk a little bit about it. So I want you to just share, what this trip was and just tell us a little bit about that trip.
Yeah, of course. So my program at Drexel each year gets together a group of maybe anywhere from like 10 to 15 students and a couple faculty and maybe some alumni. And we go down to Guatemala with a group called Hearts in Motion. And so what we do is we provide PT services to underserved communities down in Guatemala. And a lot of times that means setting up pop-up clinics. So we'll literally go to like an empty gym or an empty like abandoned building and just set up our tables, go through the streets and tell people, hey, there's a PT clinic here. And people just come from all over and we'll treat them. We do like a little quick eval and like give them some exercises, some patient education and send them on their way. And like, it was just such an incredible experience to be able to help the people down there. And I learned so much. It was probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. And I would highly recommend if anybody ever gets the chance to do something like that, going to, it doesn't even have to be a foreign country, but to an underserved area and just helping out in whatever specialty or skills that you have. Really powerful stuff. And so I'll kind of take you through it kind of day by day, but also give you the overview. So we got there, it was like a long travel day, and Guatemala, I guess depending on where you are in the country, is about an hour behind the United States Eastern time. So not too bad of a time difference. But what I realized is, like, when you're traveling, that time is so relative. Like, on the way there, I was so excited to be there that, the however many hours of travel it was, like 12 or whatever, felt like nothing because I was looking forward to it. But on the way back, like, I was tired and I was like, all right, well, now this is over and I'm coming back to the United States. Like, not that there's anything wrong with the United States, but it felt like way more than 12 hours, And what I realized, like, time is relative, just like everything else in life. Your expectations and your reality that you're living in influence how you perceive the world. And I just thought that was like a cool little thing that I picked up from the travel. But getting more into kind of the actual PT down there. So what I realized from the very start was how resilient the people down in Guatemala were and how happy they were. You would see people with all types of injuries or conditions that were really hard to deal with in the beginning, in the first place, but they don't have like access to healthcare, a lot of people down there. And so they're like dealing with these things like muscular dystrophy or Guillain-Barré, and like they're not seeing doctors, they're not seeing PTs, like they're just living with it. And then on top of that, it's like in extreme poverty, in extreme heat, and like the conditions are just terrible. No electricity, no running water. And these people, despite all of that, are so happy. And like they come into the clinic and they're like smiling, laughing, so happy to even just have human interaction with you and have the opportunity to be seen by you. And it was just such a humbling experience. One of the moments that kind of stuck out to me throughout the whole experience was, I think it was the fourth or fifth day, I woke up, my iPhone wasn't fully plugged in and it wasn't fully charged. And I was like, I was upset. I was frustrated. And I was like, what, that sucks. My phone's not fully charged. I can't like take pictures or whatever. Then we go to the clinic and we do a home visit. We walk through these beat up dirt roads, like super uneven, like there are no cars can even drive down it. We walk in like the sweltering heat down to this small tin hut, literally made of tin, just like slapped together with some wood on the roof. And we walk into the house and there's this, like, I forget how old he was, but maybe 8 or 9-year-old boy with muscular dystrophy. And he's in his wheelchair. His knees and hips and ankles are fully contracted. He's like 60 pounds, soaking wet. He's got burns all over his body because he was caught in a house fire and he couldn't move. And despite all of that, he smiled the whole time. He was laughing. He was so happy. And it was like, you know what? This kid has it so much worse objectively than I have it, but he is so happy. And it brought me back to high school when I started a club called Life's Not Fair. And it was not probably the best name for a club, because without further explanation, it was like, people were like, well, is this kid just complaining? Like, what is this? But the whole idea behind the club was that life's not fair, but it could always be worse. And so like, no matter what you're going through, like in my case, my iPhone wasn't fully charged, or, whatever you're going through, just realize that somebody out there has it worse. And that, every struggle that you face is an opportunity to be grateful for what you do have. And I realized that day in and day out in Guatemala, and it was just such a powerful experience. And the other thing that goes hand in hand with that I realized down there is that comparison truly is the thief of joy. Down there, they're living in their own world. They are so happy. They're not connected to the internet. They have no electricity, running water. They're happy with what they have. But I'm sure if they saw what we had and how we lived in America and Canada and other parts of the world, they might be a little jealous. They might be a little less happy. Who knows? Maybe not. But whether it's them or it's us in everyday life, comparing yourself to other people truly robs you of a lot. And it's hard to be happy with yourself when you're constantly wishing you had what other people have. And that's something that I think I have struggled with in the past and still do. But as you guys kind of touched on it earlier, it's tough with social media because everybody puts out, for the most part, like the highlights, everything that's good with their life. They try to make it look better than it is. They put out the highlights. And when you constantly scroll through social media and you see just the highlights, you start to forget that people aren't showing you their whole lives. Everybody has struggles, and the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And that you need to focus on yourself and be happy with what you have before you could go out and give your best to other people. And that was a big takeaway for me. Definitely that.
Yeah. It just seems like it just keeps coming back to almost the same thing often, is just that idea of like, you have the choice, like as little, like, and even when things get like terrible, right? Like some terrible, terrible things happen to people in the world. But even with that, you still have that choice to choose how you're going to wake up every day in the mindset that you're going to have. And I think I've gotten to the point, and, like obviously talking to you and just learning is like, you don't really have any other choice but to take that mindset, because what are you going to do? You're just going to, sit there and be like, oh, that's it. You're just going to let it happen. You're not going to do that. Right. So I think like hearing you talk about this and like, I think going and seeing it at like that scale is really eye-opening, for obviously for you, but it would be eye-opening for someone like me too, to just see that and be like, whoa, man, like hold on for a second, like it's not that bad.
Yeah, definitely. And going along those lines, one of the examples that I had of that in Guatemala was this man named Kike. We didn't actually get to meet him. I think he was out of town, but basically what happened was he suffered a spinal cord injury, and he was paralyzed, and he needed a lot of physical therapy. And instead of kind of wallowing in self-pity, what he decided to do was he turned his home into a PT clinic. So we went there one day and treated people at his house. We treated dozens and dozens of people, like in rooms of a house. Like he just literally took his whole house and turned it into a full-blown PT clinic with tables and exercise equipment and everything. And like, it was just so crazy how this guy, like his life was changed in an instant. He had a spinal cord injury, and he decided, you know what? PT helped me. I'm going to help other people. And he turned it into a positive. And so it's like back to that same thing, mindset. You can turn any quote unquote bad experience into a good one if you choose to. And it's all about that choice.
Yeah. And I think another thing to touch on, obviously I haven't gone through anything like that extreme in my life. Right. But I think it's also important to recognize that it's okay to like be in that, let's say, bad place or those negative thoughts, or like, not immediately switch that mindset to like what you're saying, because it's okay to feel those things for a period of time. And I think it's almost a good thing to experience that for a bit. But then once you go through, you have to, realize like, okay, I got to do something, right? Because you can't stay into that frame of mind for a long period of time, or it's just going to continue to cycle like out of control, right?
Yeah. I think as the quote guy here, I love the quote. It's okay not to be okay. It's not okay to stay that way.
Yeah, man.
And then also, you can't see the stars without the dark, right? So you need to really truly understand and accept and take in those bad experiences in order to look forward to what's to come and the positive and what you have to be grateful for.
Right. And it's all relative, right? Everyone's going through something. Like that's something I've also like, you're right with social media. You don't see a lot of stuff that people are going through, but I think I've started to realize that, no matter who it is like out there that's putting content out there or has all these followers, like no matter what, it comes down to the fact they're still human. They still have those experiences that like everyone goes through them. So I've almost just started to like have more empathy for people and knowing like, maybe this person is going through something that we don't really know about, and maybe you shouldn't be like attacking them, or like you shouldn't be like judging them, like just kind of let it, like just be positive and go forward with it, because people are going through shit.
Yeah, No, it's so true. It's so true. And kind of a funny side note on that mindset, I try to adopt that in everything I do. And that's one of the reasons I love the quote, "Be the reason someone smiles today," is because a smile can change someone's day and change someone's life. And you don't know if that person needs a smile. They might look great on the outside, but they really need that positive energy in their life. So what I try to do is, where I struggle the most is driving. Maybe it's a New Jersey thing. I don't know. I guess you can call me an aggressive driver, but
I've heard that about the New Jersey people, man. Like Steph was telling me about that when she's from New Jersey, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, she is. It's nuts. Like New Jersey's the only state where like the speed limit could be 70 miles per hour and you're going like 80 and someone passes you and like looks over at you like, "What are you doing going 80 miles per hour? You're so slow." But anyway, like I'll get stuck behind like what I would call like a bad driver, like someone going like 15 and 25. And like I have to like consciously slow myself down. And like literally the other day in the car, to myself out loud, I was like, you know what? Maybe this person just got hit in the head with a baseball bat and they're driving themselves to the hospital. And that's why they're like you never know, but like, you know, you really have to stop and realize like, you know, everybody's got something and you can't always see it. And so you really have to be conscious of that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's awesome. Joe, to wrap it up, man, is there anything else that you want to get out, let people know? Is there anything coming down the pipe for you that you're working on, that you're excited about? You can share it now, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I am just going to be doing more of the same for now. I'll be graduating PT school in a couple of months. So I will be in the job search process, probably like New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. Other than that, I'll be keeping up with social media, looking to really take the blog to a new level this year with some guest posts, some really powerful stuff. So keep an eye out for that. And near the end of the year, I might be coming out with another, if you want to call it, motivational video. So keep an eye out for that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm pumped.
We're pumped too, man. I think you're the first person who's been the second guest.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
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 Yeah, it is for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That came out weird, but
I'm honored.
Yeah.
That's awesome, eh?
Yes. That is awesome.
I almost forgot about the A until right now.
Yo, why don't you just leave like where people can find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you can find me at joerinaldi.spt. If you're listening to this after April of 2019, it'll be at joerinaldi.dpt. And then if you want to check out the blog, just type in Joe Rinaldi. That's JOERINALDI.blog, and it'll take you there. So that's pretty much all I got.
Yo, thanks, man.
Thanks for coming on. That was awesome. I love talking to you, man.
I love talking to you guys too. And thank you guys. Thank you guys, because you guys get me fired up every day, and I appreciate it.
Unreal. All right, Joe, man. Be good. Keep crushing it. Keep motivating the world. We'll see you later, man.
Sounds good. See you guys.